We begin as we always do in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Lord God, you raise up people from age to age to speak anew your word to us and to show us your ways. Such is Nano. In days when courage is needed, you give us this woman of strength to walk before us with conviction. In days of great change, you present us with a prophet whose faith is firm. As the light of her lantern brought hope into the lives made wretched by poverty and oppression, so may she inspire us to compassionate action for those in need around us.
It's a real joy to gather with you. I imagine that most of us are fairly zoomed out after several years of having to connect this way, but this makes it possible for us, doesn't it? I think I know there's going to be something about Joan at the end of this, but I know Joan will be on the minds of most of us. So I would really like us to bring Joan present with us now. And also those many women whose shoulders we stand on who've gone before us. If we can make them present, bring their spirit with us, because they've helped make us who we are today. It's interesting too, this little story about our beginnings in New Zealand. I remember sitting with Joan in a lounge and she has heard the story, so it's quite poignant, really. So the presentations came into my parish in 1980, and prior to 1980, I'd never heard of presentation sisters. In New Zealand, they're very small, and I'd come from a part of New Zealand where they just didn't exist at all. So they came into my life back in the 80s to an area that was rapidly growing, lots of young parents and little kids actually. So at the time I had 4 preschoolers and I was very pregnant with number 5. So I was a stay-at-home mum, and because of all the childcare, I wasn't really terribly engaged in the community. So 2 presentation sisters came, and already in the parish we'd had Mercy sisters who'd been there for over 125 years. But these 2 women came in, they were in their 30s, they had come straight from the classroom, so they didn't really have a background in pastoral work. I mean, every teacher does have pastoral work in their background, but they didn't have any particular formation in pastoral work. But they were absolutely fantastic. And over the next 9 years, they introduced this group of mainly housewives to things like discernment, the conscious examine. They provided formation for all kinds of ministry in the area, ran workshops, and they called us into leadership. So we really enjoyed having them there. Now, in the late 80s, they were called to another diocese, and we were going to lose them. So a group of us gathered together and talked about what their moving would be. What would we be losing when they went? And we couldn't work it out. We knew we wanted to retain something of their presence, but we just couldn't articulate it. And we felt if we didn't articulate what this was, then we'd lose it altogether. So we went to one of the sisters who lived nearby and said to her, her name was Fran. We said, Fran, what is it the presentation sisters brought to us? What makes them different to the new
I thought, okay, if she doesn't know, I'll go to the boss because they know everything. So we used to call them provincials in those days. I think we call them unit leaders now. But I went and I had a chat to Julie, and I said the same thing to her. You know, Julie, what is it that makes the presentations different to the Mercies? What is it that you brought to us in my parish? And she said, I don't know. So this was a bit of a frustration to us. Anyway, over a cup of tea, I said to her, well, who founded you? And do you have any books where I could read up about your foundress? So she gave me these. So it was Walsh's Nano and the Presentation Sisters and Raphael Considine's One Pace Beyond. Now, I took them away and I absolutely devoured them. I couldn't put the books down. And as I read through those pages, I was able to articulate exactly what it was that the presentations had brought to our place. But what was more significant for me was that I recognised the sisters in Nano. I recognised Nano in the sisters. And I recognised Nano in myself. So this was just mind-blowing to me and unbelievably exciting. So I went to back to the little group, we gathered again, and I said, look, this is what I've discovered. And there was general excitement, actually, and we thought, let's approach the sisters and see if there's some way we can have an ongoing relationship after they've gone. So that's what we did. I was delegated to go back to the leader, and I put this to her. And unbeknown to me, this kind of growing, emerging associate movement was happening all over the world, actually, in many different congregations, and the presentations had started to talk about it too. Interestingly, we were all at a loss. I thought the sisters would have known exactly what to do, but they didn't. This was new to everyone. And the genius of Julie, who was the leader at the time, was she decided to struggle with what it is we needed to do with us. So the sisters and the people who were interested in presentation values and charism, we gathered together and we talked about it, and we worked out what is it we need to do now. So there was a significant collaboration that happened. Now, just some of the gifts of collaboration that emerged during this process. You know, when you collaborate with others, there's a greater pooling of wisdom. You know, the wisdom is shared. The stress levels drop because this is shared. You're tapping into the gifts of different people, and it was an authentic collaboration. So the power for this sat in the hands of the leader. Now, she could have chosen to use that power in any way she liked, but she chose to share it. So, and this has really been the way that we've held on to this kind of sharing collaborative model down the years. It's become very clear that we're co-equal in mission. The sisters are using that language as well. So I think I'll just stop there and hand back to you, Karen.
So I think Marianne has addressed this. What attracted you to the Friends of Nano movement? She addressed what attracted her to the sisters, although she wasn't sure what that was back in the 80s. So think about what attracted you to this movement, why you stay with it, and how it is being reflected in your life.
Okay, so I'm just moving into an area now where actually I've been transformed by Nano, and she's just deeply embedded in everything I do, really. So when I first discovered Nano, I wanted to find out what made her tick, and all these years down the track, I discovered that Nano is what makes me tick. So what I thought I'd do is so what it really is, it's my spirituality. And I think you might recognize yourselves in some of this. So really it's a way of life in which one acts and reacts habitually throughout life in accordance with one's ultimate religious or ethical insights and decisions. And that's a quote from that person whose name I can't pronounce. He's a Swiss theologian. So Friends of Nano is just simply a way of being present in the world, a way of life. So for me, what was very significant is not what Nano did. We know her story, but it was discovering how she did what she did. And I'll just whip fairly quickly through these, but you will recognize them. In an ideal world, I would have drawn these from you, but you would have been able to give them to me, and I'm sure you'll recognize them. So she had a partnership with the divine. You'll recognize it's one of our core values and underpins everything else. And as individuals, we all have our own way of being in relationship with God. She took calculated risks. We could look at examples of that, but this isn't the place for it today. Prepared to challenge authority. She collaborated with others. Didn't allow setbacks to deter her. Worked out ways to bring her dreams to life. She was into this, succession planning. Recognised that education liberates. A special care for those made poor. She saw the need and made a start, and there are many others, but you can see I've run out of room on the screen. So this is Nano's blueprint for mission, and I thought it would be a good way to share this by sharing with you a project that myself and some local friends of Nano got involved in. Now I'm going to leave that on the screen, and as I talk, I think you will be able to identify all of those different elements. So back in 1998, a small group of associates, which we used to call ourselves in those days, spent time as a group reflecting on different areas of need in our local area. We became aware of young women, some of them as young as 12, who had to leave school because they were pregnant. And we went through a fairly thorough discernment process and decided that we wanted to do something about it. We weren't quite sure what it was we wanted to do about it, but we wanted to stand with these children, really, and walk with them in some way, as Nano absolutely would have. we discovered that there was a group of 6 young mums who had been ordered by the court. They were all known to the police. They'd been ordered by the court to gather one afternoon a week with their babies to learn some basic life skills. And the police had given a funding of $15,000 from their crime prevention budget. And that was used to pay a teacher. So the Friends of Nano in my local area, so there aren't many, only 5. But we decided to enter into a partnership with the women, and we just made a start by caring for their babies in another room while they studied the road code, actually. Some of them were driving cars and they didn't have a driver's license. And a local Baptist church had given us the use of some of their rooms free of charge. After a short period of time, it became very clear that more was needed. So one afternoon grew to 3 afternoons, and more young mothers heard about this. So the initial group had been ordered by the courts, but these other young mums were attracted, I think, more by the thought of gathering with other young women like themselves and having free childcare, actually. So they could come and they could just be the youngsters with other youngsters. The money for the teachers soon ran out. And we knew that we couldn't rely on an unending supply of well-qualified people who'd engage in this ministry without payment. So we needed to find some kind of sponsorship. We needed some kind of a succession plan, really. And we discovered that the Ministry of Education would fund teachers and provide an operating grant if we had a minimum of 30 girls and ran a full-time school. Now, running a full-time school never entered into our heads. And actually, at the time I was working full-time, I had my own business. Anyway, it was quite a leap, but we embraced the challenge. We also felt we needed to create an early childcare, formalised early childcare education facility with a qualified team to nurture the babies. And we discovered that if we did this, this would also be fully funded by the government. We didn't have any problems finding young mums. At the end of each school year, there's a big school ball. And after that school ball, 9 months later, there are a lot of babies being born, we discovered. So it's a bit of an indictment on us here in New Zealand, I think. We needed a bigger space. So the local Anglican church provided us with their church hall for the mums for school and their scout hall for the babies. Certainly, we had no intention of doing this, and we didn't have the skills to do what we were doing. My background had been as a school teacher, but at this level, nothing had prepared us for it at all. But we'd been exploring the Friends of Nano group had been exploring Nano for some years by this stage, and we knew how she went about it. So we thought, well, we could go about it the same way. So she had simply made a start and allowed her ministry to unfold. So that helped us. And we also had Catholic social teaching behind us. At this stage, I was doing university part-time and was right in the middle of a Catholic social teaching course. So that was helpful when it came to forming policies. And then I became the money person. I had a business that was, it was financial management and payrolls and all of that kind of thing. So I was the logical person to take care of the money. So I formed relationships with all kinds of organisations and service groups that would provide money and goods, things like Rotary and, and my husband and I did all the financial management, and we looked after compliance and taxes and paid the salaries. So as time went by, this grew to, we were paying 20 people, some in the school and some in the in support services for us too, and some for the early childcare teachers. Lots of money came in, actually. It was amazing. People resonated strongly with these young women, and we had enough money. I remember going out and buying a bus, a 20-seater bus, and we were donated a van. And so by the windows, we had a car seat by every window. And the women would be picked up every day from their homes and dropped back again. Sometimes if they didn't want to get out of bed, the driver of the bus would go in and, come on, up you get, and they'd help. The other young mums would help gather the things that would be needed for the day. We also needed money to buy things like computers, cots, high chairs, play equipment. And we found sponsors for breakfast and lunches. So I remember the Catholic Women's League used to go on every Friday with a lunch for the girls. They often came hungry. They didn't have money for breakfast. And we discovered some of them were watering down their baby's formula to make it stretch. So, social need really was our biggest challenge. The women who came to us mostly came from abusive situations. They were pregnant through incest, for some. Others, they had a baby with much older men, friends of their fathers. They imagined they were, deeply in love with them. We were really quite significantly out of our depth. So we kept collaborating with others who had the skills and were able to help us. So we employed, we got a full-time social worker as well, and all kinds of speakers came in. Nobody ever charged. So we got people from the hospital, and we got lawyers and nutritionists, relationship experts. I remember one young woman, we had someone who came in and talked about incest, actually. And there was a youngster who came up to me afterwards and said, I didn't know that was wrong. I thought everybody did it. We've just really got no idea. So these weren't ordinary kids that might get pregnant and had families to care for them. These were kids that were in abusive situations. They were unsupported at home. And for many of them, they were tossed out of their home because they'd brought shame on their families by becoming pregnant very young. Quite horrendous, actually. We found that a number of them were forced to move into very unsavory relationships because they felt that was their only option. So we were able to show them that there were other options. We were still in makeshift accommodation at this stage, and we thought that what we really wanted, one of our big dreams, was to have a school, a purpose-built school. At the time, my spiritual director was the leader of a congregation, not the presentations, a different one altogether. And she offered me 2 classrooms in a local Catholic school. And that was so tempting when you had nothing, you know. There was going to be no charge for this. And I remember thinking deeply about this and knowing that if we put our school on a Catholic property, there are so many assumptions that are made by people about who Catholics are and what Catholics do, and that it would prevent a number of young women coming to us. So it was a very difficult thing, actually, but I remember turning it down. But we still needed our own buildings. We'd had a few exceptionally good reports from the Education Review Office. They were amazed at our policies that, remember, we had made up based on presentation values in Catholic social teaching. So our policies were different to those that they had seen elsewhere, and also our way of caring for these children were different to what they would see in a normal school. So when we asked for a purpose-built school and early childcare facility, they readily agreed to building us a school for the girls, but they said they couldn't build us the early childcare facility because it wasn't part of their policy. We felt that in order to break the cycle of abuse, it was very, very important that we could role model nutrition and caring for children and how you talk to your babies, and that the mothers needed to be right with their babies for all these key moments in their lives. So we needed to have the children right near the mothers. It meant that if a child started taking their first steps, we could run and get the mum, and the mother could be part of it. So we weren't deterred. We didn't give up on this, but we didn't accept the school without the early childcare facility. So we went to our members of parliament, we went to government, and we put a brief to them, we put a case, and they changed the law. So they built, we got our early childcare centre as well, and it's just the most amazing thing. There's many layers to the story, and some of the deprivation we found and had to work with was way. I mean, I'm a Catholic kid. I was brought up in Catholic schools, and I never imagined these kinds of things were happening outside my own front door. So I'll stop the story there, but you'll be interested to know that now, almost 25 years after that school was started, a good number of those women that came to us with an absolute sense of hopelessness and a track record of school truancy have achieved an enormous deal. I'm often stopped in the street. They used to call me Mary Ham, you know, and if I hear someone calling out Mary Ham in the street, I know it's one of the girls. Some have gone on to university, and most are holding down jobs they never imagined would be possible for them. So I could talk about a lot of different little projects, and in my working life, I worked in our diocese. I was in senior leadership in the Catholic Church. I worked closely with Cardinal John Dew. And I took my presentationness with me. One of the things he got me to do on his behalf, I had all the ongoing formation of our clergy. I had to bring them together 5 times a year. I had the orientation of our international priests, and the ongoing formation of all our pastoral councils and all of this kind of stuff. So with me, I took Nano. If there was never a challenge she couldn't resolve, I came to be the troubleshooter in the diocese. And it was all based on how Nano did it. So she knew how to challenge authority without escalating a situation. Nano has made me brave.